The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, welcome everybody to the National Down Syndrome Society's DS Works webinar series. My name is Vanessa Quick. I'm the Director of Educational Programming here at the National Down Syndrome Society. This month is exciting because we're celebrating November as National Entrepreneurship Month with a bit of discussion on some of the options and possibilities of self-employment for people with disabilities. A few housekeeping notes first. All of you out there listening are muted. If you have a question, please type it in the box on your screen. We will be doing Q&A at the end of the presentation, and we'll do our best to get to those. So please feel free to just type them in. Another thing, this is being recorded and will be posted on www.ndss.org following the webinar. So please feel free to check back or share with your friends, coworkers, loved ones. Now to today's topic of entrepreneurship. We were expecting to have the Pyrons, Marianne and Blake Pyron, who are co-owners of Blake Snow Shack today. Unfortunately, due to some difficulties, we are unable to show their pre-recorded video. However, we will be sharing those with those of you who are registered for the webinar. We'll send you out a link to that. We'll also be posting it next to the link where we've got this webinar posted, so they will be connected. So be sure to check that out, or if you're on the webinar live, be sure to keep an eye on your email box for that. Anyway, as I said, this is November Entrepreneurship Month, so what a great opportunity for DS Works to celebrate entrepreneurs. Today we have Boaz Nelson and Minerva, Santiago, who are going to be sharing their expertise on self-employment models and accessibility of self-employment today. So with that, I'm sorry, Boaz, I did not say your full name, Boaz Nelson Santiago and Minerva Santiago. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll turn it over to your slide.
Hi, thank you very much for having us on. It's a real pleasure. And we hope that the next few minutes in our presentation will open up a nice dialogue between parents and professionals, really, which is something very necessary in order for us to really address the employment issues for our loved ones with disabilities, particularly with individuals with Down syndrome in this case. So again, thank you, Vanessa, and we're so grateful to have this opportunity to share our Picasso Einstein model. So what I want to do is just kind of explain a little bit about the slide that all of you are looking at. Our model is called the Job Creators Model, and the reason why we're calling it Job Creators and not Business Creators is because when you think of designing a business, it can be quite complex. It can also be very, very intimidating for families, and so we decided to call it the Job Creators Movement because it really is about helping families create one job for one person at a time. And I know that entrepreneurship is an increasingly a more common conversation within the disability community, and the term entrepreneurship can sometimes be confusing based on the context in which it is used. And so, you have concepts that are like micro-enterprise concepts where individuals who do not have disabilities are starting small businesses to provide customized employment for individuals with disabilities. There are other ideas of micro-enterprise where there's various individuals with disabilities working together within one business unit. And all of those are necessary ventures. There is no silver bullet. What we did want to clarify, though, is that that is not the type of model that we are trying to help families create. I mean, we really are trying to take what we would consider the most simplistic, most risk-free approach to employment, and that is just helping families focus on the abilities and interests of the person, and in exploring fully how you can turn that interest into a money-making opportunity. And so just some of the examples that you see on the slide here, you know, what if someone loves to game or loves gaming, you know, how do people get paid in the gaming industry? How does one person who's an artist generate revenue with his or her art? We have an incredible video of a young man who loved Legos as a child and has been able to turn that interest into an adult version of a job for himself, and of course writing and blogging and laundry business and things like that. So we're going to move on to the next slide. So what we would encourage all of you guys to do is once we're done here listening to this information, is go to our website. We have a whole entire page with videos of families from all over the world who have decided that self-employment is the way forward for a meaningful and purposeful job for their child. And you'll hear from individuals with disabilities as well as from their parents. So please visit that link, jot it down, and take a look at it. And it may actually help you come up with some of your own ideas, maybe some of the interests of the individuals focused in these videos may be similar interest. Well, why can't you start a similar self-employment venture? So we hope that those will assist all of you listening in really helping visualize the type of models that we're talking about. So let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. So I'm not going to talk a lot about this topic because I don't think there's anyone on this call that thinks that traditional employment is very successful right now. And it's not because of any other thing, I think, other than just timing. You know, the job market took a hit. There has been growth in the job market in the past couple of years, but when it comes to employment for individuals with disabilities, what we have seen is, on the contrary, there has been a downtick or an uptick in unemployment, if you would. And so clearly there's a room for improvement in the pursuit of traditional employment, and we're just going to go over a couple of slides. So if you could go to the next slide. So I know we're working with the Down syndrome society today, but what we have found is that employment is a problem for all disabilities. And so where in a lot of cases the Down syndrome and autism society or autism community do not overlap in perhaps services and funding, what we are seeing from our perspective is that employment is a problem across the board for all disabilities. And so here are just a few numbers. You know, 91% of adults with autism are unemployed, and then of course the employment gap widens when you start talking about individuals who have more impacted barriers because of their autism. So let's move on to the next slide. And here's some of the things that would interest our callers. Is based on some recent stats we've seen, you know, 89% of adults with Down syndrome are unemployed. I mean, that's just an unacceptable number. And then as you dig a little deeper into these employment opportunities, it's, you know, what we found is 1/3 of those being labeled as working, quote unquote, are actually only being paid. And then, you know, some of those individuals, most of those individuals that are working are actually underemployed. And when we talk about underemployment, what we're talking about is that the abilities of that person supersede the job opportunity, and they're not being offered any opportunities for growth, or perhaps not being offered any raises, not being offered any promotions. And so we see that as a growing problem where individuals who have a lot of great abilities are being offered what we consider the 5 Fs. So, you know, food, filth, flowers, factories, and filing. And so just in our case, most of the individuals that we have come across and have been through our programming far supersede any of these job limited offers in the 5Fs, have had incredible ideas, are able to do so much more. And then of course there are those who love flowers and those who are very meticulous and love cleaning service. So we're not saying that the 5Fs are not proper and meaningful employment for some, but what we are seeing is that most of the jobs are being funneled into these 5Fs, and there's where some of the barriers exist that we see. And then of course the average pay per hour since the enactment of the ADA has rounded out to about $3 an hour. So clearly it's more than just employment. There's an issue with meaningful employment, there's an issue with underemployment, and then of course there's an issue in the economies. Who can truly become independent making $3 an hour? Well, that's clearly an issue that needs to be addressed as well. So we'll move on to the next slide. For those of you who are unaware of the Subminimum Wage Act, this is the reason why wages have averaged out at about $3 an hour. Well, because it's legal. Over 2 decades ago, the Subminimum Wage Act basically made it legal for companies who were going to hire individuals with disabilities to be able to state the case that because of their disabilities they were unable to fulfill the demands of the job, and so therefore warranted a lesser pay than the federal minimum wage. Well, after 2 decades, what you've seen is not only have they been paying less, but they've been paying significantly less than the federal minimum wage and have averaged at about $2 an hour. And this is for all disabilities in general. So let's move forward. We've talked a little bit about the barriers. Let's go on to the next slide. And this is something I would encourage all of you guys to take a look at. The Star Tribune did an investigative report in November of last year, so we're talking about just a year ago, and found that individuals like this young man have been earning about $2 an hour for 10, 12, 15 years and have basically been doing the same thing, repetitive work, for the past 12 or 15 years. So what's the problem with this scenario? Well, this young man has not been garnishing any additional skills in his work environment, and so if he were to become unemployed or if he were to desire to do something different, he himself has not been able to develop any additional skills other than the one that he has been required to do in his work. And so it's something that a lot of people are looking at. This is not a secret that traditional employment has been a challenge both for those seeking employment as well as the employers who have either lacked the guidance or the education, and some simply lack resources to dedicate towards providing those accommodations. And so there is a challenge and barrier on both sides, and understandable challenges. We get it. So let's move forward to the next slide, and let's talk a little bit more about what we're hoping that our person-centered model can do in addressing some of these issues. So regardless of what model you hear out there, that's entrepreneurship, micro-enterprise, we would like to just clarify what our model is. And so we are very, very convinced that the first step in making a person-centered self-employment experience sustainable is you've got to base that employment opportunity on the interest of the person. And we'll talk a little bit more about why we think that's important, but that's step number one for our model. Number two is pursue the least complex concepts. So we really encourage our families that we work with to come up with a business model where they can start from home without having to put money into the business and getting a retail space and so forth. There are so many online retail spaces, whether it's Etsy, eBay, Craigslist, OfferUp, the list goes on and on and on. There are so many ways for people to sell their services and their products that we think that starting at home not only allows you to start off simply, but also allows you to do it from the comfort of your home, get the experience in developing this business first before you launch it into a full retail space. Number three, where again, just to be a little bit repetitive, our model is about creating one job for one person. So if you have one son or one daughter with Down syndrome, our model is focused on helping the parents garnish support and to come up with concepts that are really based on the interest of that one person and in creating a job for that one person. So for instance, we're not here to help families start a pool cleaning business. Instead, we would be helping a family identify that one individual likes to clean pools, and so that would be a pool cleaning person who happens to render the same services but just wouldn't be in the contemporary business idea, but it would just be one entrepreneur that's providing one service or one product that that person enjoys and then yielding some sort of profit. And so again, a simple model to kind of help things get started. And then number four is a really, really big thing for us because many of the parents that we've worked with initially were apprehensive about self-employment because they think that self-employment or being an entrepreneur somehow it means that you lock yourself up in your house and you virtually have no interaction with the community. And our model really integrates community integration as part of the business model. So for instance, what entrepreneur really excels without having tentacles into the community? Well, really no entrepreneur. So this is about business. So part of business is connecting with your community, knowing where your market is, where your customers are, where your business supports are going to be. And so the business should absolutely be the vehicle for community integration. So it should not be a business concept that keeps your son or your daughter at home with no interaction with the world. On the contrary, you should absolutely leverage the business to take that person into the community and now do so with a purpose, because when they go into the community, they're going into the community to share a service or a product with that community. So let's move on to the next slide. So our person-centered business model, or our job creators movement, really has these 6 basic elements that we feel are critical pieces to making sure that whatever it is you're going to do in the terms of entrepreneurship or self-employment, that it not only works today or 3 months from now, but works into the future of that individual long after the parents have passed away. And so one of the key elements to sustainability is you have to have a support team. We don't want any parents coming up with all the ideas and putting this business together for their son or their daughter by themselves, because that's not sustainable. So the question is, if you were to do that, what happens when you pass away? So a support team is a critical piece in making sure that as the parents deal with some of these inevitable things in the future, like disability that they will have themselves because of age, and then of course, the subsequent passing of parents, that business will continue to be alive and thriving, and that will serve as part of the identity of that person with a disability, and that person can continue to go on with their own lives after the passing of their parents. And we think that a support team is a critical piece of that sustainability. Benefits in the business. Many parents want to know, if I start my own business for or with my child with Down syndrome, what's going to happen to the benefits? Well, there are many, many ways to leverage the benefits that you currently have or that you could have and still keep them and start a business. So you've got to become an expert, but there are many, many programs that have existed for a long time, that are new, that are about giving the incentive to families to create wealth and keeping the benefits while they have that wealth accumulation period. So with the mind of getting off of benefits in the future. I mean, that's the real incentive behind some of these programs, is they want you to get off of public benefits if you can. And we think that's a great goal for families to do that. Designing a business fit, making sure that the business is about the person, fits the person, and that the person can grow with the business. I spoke about community integration, sustainability, and of course, again, keeping the business simple. So let's move on to the next slide. So if you haven't already had it pounded into your head, I just want to reiterate just one more time that our person-ventured, our job creators model is about identifying one person who has one passion and turning that into one job. I mean, it's really that simple. So let's move on to the next slide. So this is important, this statement. You know, self-employment is viable for everyone. Now, it doesn't mean that everyone has to be self-employed, but what we are saying is that we don't want individuals or families or professionals to be so caught up in the disability of the individual that they somehow rationalize that if it's that difficult for the person to get a traditional job, then there's no way in the world they could be self-employed. You know, on the contrary, what we feel is that those who have more significant barriers are the better candidates for self-employment because, for instance, if a person is nonverbal, has real barriers, you know, to find a traditional employment experience for that person that is going to provide all the supports for them is going to be very, very difficult. But that makes them a great candidate for self-employment because it allows you to carve a business, a job around what they can do, not necessarily what they can't. And so we really feel that based on our experience with families that we know of, for instance, in the Northeast, we know of a family where the son is blind, has cerebral palsy, some autism, and yet he's self-employed. You know, when we show those experiences to our families, you know, our response is, well, what's the excuse that we have to not at least give it a try? So let's move on to the next slide. We can go on to the next slide. So one of the things that we like to talk about is no one can deny the fact that when you explore self-employment, it immediately increases the employment options. No one can argue with that. So for instance, if you have someone that has significant barriers but is really good at something, you know, simple, like let's say they're really good at creating things with their hands, well, maybe they won't get a job at a regular company creating some sort of arts or crafts, but they can immediately create arts and crafts, throw that onto an online store, and all of a sudden they can create revenue. Well, that's creating a job. So when you seek self-employment options increase immediately, and also the amount of options are also increased immediately, because if you live in a rural part of a country that does not have a metropolitan area accessible to you where the jobs are massive, then what do? Well, online businesses automatically increase employment options. So that's why we feel that self-employment is viable. Let's look at number 2. So we can go to the next slide. So we have this great video of this young man who had a job, right? And you would think that he was happy, but he wanted to move up. And so when he asked to do something more, they did not allow him to do more. That's all they wanted him to do. And so the mom was saying was, you know, that's all they were offering him was a job of, you know, sweeping the floor or pushing the carts, and he wanted more. Well, we feel that when a person is self-employed, the business offers them endless opportunities to progress. So if an individual starts off doing one simple task in their own business, when they're ready to grow, guess what? They can, because the business belongs to them. If they want to do one task today and tomorrow they want to do a different task, well, guess what? They can, because they're not living under the constraints of a job description or a resume or a job title. Today they can do one thing and tomorrow they can do another. So small businesses really offer really authentic opportunities for the person to grow and also grow at their pace. When they're ready to grow, they can do that. So let's look at the next slide. So diversified supports. This is a really, really big one. We have a model that's called the AAA model, and we feel that self-employment really brings in diversified supports. So instead of a traditional job requiring a job coach as a main support, self-employment can have supports from individuals of all walks of life. It can be their peers. So for instance, if there's a peer that really loves to design websites, well, guess what? That person can be a support for the business. So let's go on to the next slide really quick so I can kind of give you an example of what this looks like. So our AAA support model basically means, if you look towards the right, you have a core team and then you have a business team. The core team can be parents, siblings, friends, someone who lives out of state, local college students. And the reason why we call it AAA is because when you run a small business, it doesn't really matter anymore if the person is connected to Down syndrome or has an affinity for Down syndrome. All it really matters is, does the person possess a skill, a talent, or information that can help you benefit the business? So one classic example would be is go to your local university and find students that are part of a marketing program or a website design program who have to, by their academic requirements, design a website that they have to turn into their professor. And talk to the dean of that department, the chair, and see if there's a student in that college that's willing to design a website for your small business as part of their academic requirements. Well, guess what? That's a support. It's anyone. It's anywhere, so the local university, and anytime, meaning now you're not requiring, that they come to your house hours on end during the week. You're just asking them to dedicate their own time, whatever time that may be, to put together a website that you could use. Or maybe find someone who can help you with social media, put together a nice Facebook account. Maybe someone who loves to do videography can do a really short video on what this business is and highlight the individual with Down syndrome and what they love to do and why they're starting this business. Tell a story. And then you have professional organizations. Your local Chamber of Commerce can now become a support system. Local entrepreneurs can become a support system. So a AAA support approach really opens up a diversified support team so that mom and dad don't have to do it all. And when you involve peers that are similar age, now you're addressing some sort of sustainability, because what you don't want is that all of the support team members are the same age as mom and dad. Why? Well, because you don't want the entire support team to kind of go away at around the same time simply because of the natural transition of life. So having younger support members is important for sustainability. One great example is we had a young man with Down syndrome who started his own business and had a cousin that he absolutely loved who lived in another country. And so what they decided to do was do a quick 15-minute Skype call with this young man's cousin, and that cousin of his who was in another country would help him review the self-employment tasks he has for that day. So again, 15 minutes is the anytime part. It doesn't matter where the person lives, so it can be from anywhere if you know how to leverage technology, and it could be anyone, a cousin, a brother, a sister, a friend, a local entrepreneur. So this is a really, really important piece of making support systems sustainable and also providing a diverse support team that not only helps the person, but also helps the business stay sustainable and provide an opportunity for growth. So let's move on to the next slide. So we can't say this enough. As my wife and I are parents to 2 boys with developmental disabilities, we want our kids to be happy. We don't want them to just have a job. We want them to have a job that they love. And we would argue that everyone on this phone or phone webinar is moved by things that they love. So our loved ones with disabilities and Down syndrome, they deserve an employment opportunity that is meaningful to them. And if you can find that opportunity and identify what moves that person, then they have intrinsic motivation to do what they love, to make sure it works, to do it consistently, and even arguably to do it for the rest of their lives. And it's a very powerful piece of this equation, because what you don't want to do is live a life having to push your children to do things. You want them to be able to get in the driver's seat and do it on their own because they enjoy doing it. And that takes me to the next slide, number 5. This is what having intrinsic motivation addresses, sustainability. So the likelihood of a person with disabilities doing what they love to do long after the parents have passed away and they have gone into adulthood is very, very high. They're going to continue to do simply the things that they enjoy doing. Well, if you can attach a revenue generating model designed around what they already love to do, now then what you're also saying is that long after the parents have passed away and this person has gone into adulthood, they're going to continue to generate revenue. I mean, it's just really that simple. So here passion does equal sustainability, because people typically do what they love to do from childhood all the way to expiration. So let's move on to the next slide. And this is a big piece. People who concern themselves with behaviors and people who are concerned that perhaps someone's behavior may inhibit them from being employed, what we have found is if an individual has something that anchors them, you know, they have what we call a value block. It's something that gives them purpose, intrinsic motivation. In this case, let's assume it's their business. They're going to be interested in socializing because now they have something to say. They're going to be interested in communicating because now they have something to sell. And if they understand that selling means that they can buy things that they like, then it's also going to address some of their behaviors. Well, you may ask how. Well, I'll tell you from our experience, when we have seen our children engaged in an activity that they enjoy, we have never had a behavior problem. We've never had to address behaviors. We've never had to correct behaviors. And there's something about the person being engaged in something that they enjoy that almost stifles all issues related to behavior. As a matter of fact, when our boys are engaged in something that they enjoy and they run into, let's say, a problem or something that challenges them, they don't even give up. They supersede those challenges and keep moving forward. Why? Well, because they're engaged in something that they enjoy. So this business, this small self-employment opportunity could be the value block that they need that gives them the interest that they lack in socializing, communicating, and addressing some of those behaviors. Let's move on to the next slide. So we're not going to talk too much about this, but you know, a lot of parents will say, well, my kid's only 12 or 13, you know, I'll address this as they get older. And our response would be is don't wait, or really why wait? You can erase those terrible transition years at the age of 17, 18 through 22 by getting started now. And imagine if your child at the age of 12 is being exposed to self-employment, knows what profit is, knows what it is to exchange money for a good or a service. Imagine how prepared they're going to be when they are 18 or 22, regardless of whether or not they actually pursue self-employment or still want that traditional job. They're still going to be so much more prepared for whatever it is that they do choose. So if you go on to the next slide, we have an incredible family who started exploring self-employment at the age of 11, and just 2 years later, this young girl who is only 13 not only has her own small business, just received her Capital One money card, and by the time she's 18, when she decides for herself whether she wants to continue to do this self-employment venture or get her own job, she's going to be so far advanced simply because she will have spent the last 5 years really understanding the complexities of business. She'll have a deeper appreciation for whatever job she does choose. And we just really encourage families to not wait. Get started now, and you will see a huge shift in the right direction as they get older. So we'll go on to the next slide. And this is basically our message to all of you. We are absolutely not saying that self-employment will replace traditional jobs or even that everyone will be self-employed. But what we are saying is that all persons with disabilities deserve that choice, regardless of what we perceive their disabilities to be. And that is really our main mission with Picasso Einstein, is getting agencies, families, individuals, professionals to see self-employment as a viable path towards meaningful employment, purposeful jobs, and exploring and offering that opportunity at the onset and not as a last resort out of desperation. So the last slide has some of our contact information. We encourage all of you to learn more about us. You can go to Picasso Einstein and see some of the videos that I suggested you watch. If you go to selfemployed.org, we have an ebook that you can download that's free that kind of helps you understand what are some of the processes you would have to go through in exploring designing a business fit for your son or your daughter with Down syndrome. And I hope that all of you use this opportunity to really just think about what self-employment could do for your son or your daughter. Look at them in a different light. And we're open for questions.
We are. Thank you so much for that really, really good presentation. I especially appreciate your slides. That's excellent quality there. In addition to the content, of course, it only helps to highlight it. But we do have time for questions here. So if you've got a question, now is your chance. Please type it into the box on your screen. We'll do our best to get to them. Okay, to start, how do you find diversified support?
So we recommend that families start with their local neighborhood. So for instance, get in the car with your son or your daughter and tour your local neighborhood, the local shopping plazas, find out where your nearest accountant is so that if you do need an accountant for your business, you could perhaps ask him or her to help you with your business. That is diversifying your supports because you're immediately going to the neighborhood in which your family lives in. What we find is that if you connect with individuals that live and work in your neighborhood, you have a common appreciation for that neighborhood, and it just serves for a better conversation when someone finds out that just down the street someone is starting this really amazing small business with an incredible purpose. And diversifying supports can also mean reaching out to family members and friends that don't necessarily live in the state. You know, if there's someone that your son or your daughter really, really enjoys or likes being with, whether it's a friend, a family member, an aunt, a cousin, reach out to them and ask them to participate in team meetings or a conversation via Skype. And I think leveraging technology is a very important piece of this, is that we should not be limited by geographical limitations when we have tools like Skype that allow us to communicate with people regardless of where they are in the world. So that would be what I encourage you to start off with, is connect with your local neighborhood, your local business community, get out there and tour the neighborhood and find out where those individuals are, and not be afraid to ask for help, not be afraid to ask for assistance with the business.
I'll just remind everybody, this is your chance to ask a question. Just type it into the box on your screen. How young is too young to get involved in a pursuit like this?
I mean, it's tough for me to say. I mean, depending on the maturity of the young man or young lady, but I would just say 11, 12, 13 would be a good age to at least start the conversation with them, really start thinking about what the person enjoys, what they like to do. And I think it's a good age also because perhaps they're transitioning from perhaps some of the more childish interests that they have into more adult interests. But nonetheless, don't be dismayed by childish interests. I know a lot of adults who have very childish interests at Disney that make a lot of money. So I'm not encouraging you to necessarily stifle a childish interest that someone has, but instead really just think about the maturity level of that person at the time. Think about the interests. Are they already defined? Does someone already have a clear understanding of what they like? But I think 11, 12, 13 are good times to start. And I think also because in their academic learning experience, they should also be having more conversations that perhaps are laterally more congruent to the conversation of business, like math and career and things like that. So I would say 11, 12, 13, somewhere around there is good.
Great. All right, everybody, it's your last chance. If you got a question, please type it in. In the meantime, we've got a number of self-advocates who are on the call on the webinar today. What would your advice be to them?
So my advice to any self-advocate is to make sure that you really focus on a job that you enjoy. And the reason why that's important is because if you truly enjoy it, when you speak about it to others, you're going to do so in a very exciting, engaging way. So I would encourage you to, really avoid getting desperate and going after the first job that comes along. Additionally, just like I've encouraged parents to get support, I would encourage you to get support too. Know exactly what to ask for. So for instance, don't just ask someone for help. Know exactly what help it is you need. So for instance, if you're going to go to a college to ask a college student to help you with something, know what it is you need help with. Is it your social media? Is it putting together a Facebook page? Is it designing a website? Be specific about what you're asking someone to do. And I would also encourage you to make sure that when you ask for help, make sure that what you're asking that person to do is something that they enjoy. So again, I'll defer back to the college student. If the college student doesn't really enjoy or know a lot about designing websites, then they're probably not going to be really enthusiastic about helping you. But if you ask a student that really loves doing websites and is already doing websites, then when you ask for help, it's going to be less help from their end and more from their perspective doing something that they already enjoy. So likewise, find people that enjoy doing something and then ask them to help you do that thing. And look at the resources on our selfemployed.org, download the ebook, look at our webinars, educate yourself so that when you speak with others, you're also able to educate them on what self-employment is and why it's viable. So those would be my things that I would encourage you to do to get started. And do something, try it. Don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. In all of our classroom sessions, we really teach that real learning happens when you do something. So don't think you have to have all the ideas worked out in your head. Just get out there and try something, and that's the best teacher.
Great. We got a couple of questions here. Can people who are older, like 33 or older, do this? Also, how do you start this on your own as a self-advocate?
So again, my encouragement to the self-advocates, I think, is applicable to anyone regardless of their age. For instance, we just had a man who was already in his 30s who started a business where he couldn't drive because of his disabilities, but he could ride a bicycle. And what he decided to do was start a business where he would watch watch homes in communities where people typically only come in for seasons. So in Florida, for instance, we call them snowbirds. So his market was selling to snowbirds who were away for months at a time and saying, I could ride my bicycle around your neighborhood and make sure that everything looks okay from the outside, making sure that there's nothing broken, that no one has broken into your house, and if I see something, I would contact you immediately. And that is a very simple business that he was able to do and to start on his own. But here's the key. Get a team. You know, more people involved in helping you start your business lead to just better ideas. So because you're a self-advocate doesn't mean that your self-employment venture needs to be only you. You can lead the conversation, let people know what you love to do, but certainly please invite people to the conversation. Get ideas from other people. Invite them to assist if they can. But no business can be sustainable if it's just you by yourself. So I still would encourage you to get out there and garnish some supports. Ask local entrepreneurs to give you good ideas of how you should run your business. Go to a local college and see if you can get a college student to help you design your website if you don't know how to do that. I still would encourage you to do all of those things.
For those who can't transport themselves, can you do this at your own home?
Oh, absolutely. As a matter of fact, in the presentation, I specifically suggested that whatever you're going to do should be something you can start from your own home. So, for instance, there's one case of a young man who had never been employed, had significant barriers to his disability, but one thing that was identifiable in regards to what he enjoyed doing was he loved the hot tactile integration of clothing that had just come out of the dryer. So he loved to fold clothing. And basically the business that was put together was a laundry business, a washing machine and a dryer, right out of their garage. Their first two clients were their two neighbors on either side of their house. And little by little, he began to grow within that business where he went from only folding clothes to receiving merchandise to going out to the neighborhood where he could pass out flyers. And of course, you're talking about many, many opportunities for online business. I'll give you one other example. A young man had a lot of old video games that he did not play, so he decided to start his own eBay store. And what he found was that there were a lot of his other friends who had old video games that they no longer played, so he asked if he could have them and started selling all of their video games through an eBay store and did very, very well. And I think he continues to do very well by just getting other people's things that they no longer want and selling it online. And he has clients all over the world. So you have Etsy, eBay, OfferUp, Craigslist. I mean, there's a number of online stores that are already put together. You just need to know what you want to sell. And if you're an artist, you know, if you're a writer, you can sell those things through all of those online stores as well. As a matter of fact, if you love to write, Amazon now helps you self-publish, and you can sell your poetry, your writings, your books, whatever it is that you want to write, and you can sell it online. So if you can't leave your home, still have support, still get people from the community to come to your house if you can to help you with the business, but use the internet to sell your product or your service.
Now, how do you find the business that's right for you?
So if you go back to the person-ventured model, the first step in finding the right business that's right for you is do you love it? I mean, it's just really that simple. If you can envision yourself enjoying doing what you're about to do, then that's a good business fit. You also want to do a business that capitalizes on what you can do, not on what you can't. You don't want a small business to be a frustrating experience. So I'll give you an example. Our son has a very high level interest in numbers. it has nothing to do with math, but he loves to see numbers. He loves to put collages of numbers together, and it's something that he will do all on his own. No one has to remind him to do it. No one has to help him to do it, but it's something that he enjoys. So we helped him put together a business model that fits him. Why? Well, because it is based on what he enjoys doing, which is putting together numbers and turning those into art pieces. And it fits him because it's not challenging for him. It's something he already excels at, something that he's interested in doing. So my recommendation would be is to focus on what you enjoy doing, and then next maybe find out who else enjoys what you enjoy and how are they making money. The chances are pretty high that what you enjoy doing, someone else also enjoys doing, and also someone is probably already making money somehow related to what you enjoy doing. So just get out there and research, but make sure that it's based on something that you're interested in. You know, we have a Tier 1 course that if you go to selfemployed.org, the entire course is based on how to design a business that fits the person. And so I would recommend, if someone is interested in learning how do you go about doing that, what are the steps that you take, I would encourage you to go to selfemployed.org, and you'll see that next month in December we have a webinar. It's a 2-hour webinar, and it's all about designing a business fit. So that would be something I can encourage you guys to do as well.
Oh, great. So would that be the next step for someone who says, she's 33 years old and interested in being self-employed, I don't know how?
Yes. Yeah, I would encourage them to take that 2-hour course, and it takes them through the entire process of getting started. It also will provide some downloadable tools and worksheets that the individual could utilize, print out, and even share with other individuals that they would use as a team. So yeah, definitely educate yourself, get started by using some of our tools on selfemployed.org, and of course we're always open for additional questions after that, and they could sign up for our newsletter. Any person who signs up for a product or a course or an ebook automatically goes onto our monthly newsletter list, and we do our very best to keep people educated on new trends, new platforms, new opportunities to help them in their self-employment venture.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, and we got a thank you out there from a person who asked the last question. Says you have helped her a lot.
Oh,
so
good.
Thank you. Yeah, so thanks a lot for providing this information. I know we're going to be hearing a lot more from Picasso Einstein in the coming months through NDSS and our webinar series. But for those of you out there, this webinar is being recorded. It will be posted on ndsf.org. So if you'd like to revisit any portion, please do so. We got another comment here. Great webinar! Exclamation point. So I concur. Thanks so much for being with us today, and everybody have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it, and I hope that everyone has a great afternoon as well.
Okay. Bye.